Hi, future bureaucrats of India. Welcome to LearnStroke and welcome to the exclusive current affairs segment called as Simply Simplified, the exclusive current affairs review for civil service examination. So, as you know, this is a newspaper analysis. We give you the analysis, we give you the review and decoded versions of important news items that appeared in the newspapers. So, let's quickly take a close look at that. You're doing this session with me, Arjun R. Shankar, and let's take a quick look at the most important points or important areas that we are discussing in today's session. We are discussing about the center versus judicial interference because the Supreme Court of India versus central government, there is a small tussle and we need to discuss that. Then the Nepal political crisis because Nepal witnessed a no confidence motion. So a lot of things about Nepal political crisis, we need to discuss that. And what do you mean by Bangladesh vaccine diplomacy? This invites for a big global thought process on this topic, and we are talking about a vaccine diplomacy. And what do you mean by qualified institutional placement or QIP? Because a lot of recently Indigo is raising money from there. So what is this platform? How can you raise money? How can you raise funds from this platform? And what is BRSR, the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, very important, which talks about business responsibility. We need to find out. It appeared in the newspaper. And in this concept, what is what is the concept of stakeholder capitalism? And very importantly, what do you mean by the 9 principles of NVG? And these are the important news items that we have to discuss in today's session. Let's quickly take a look. Qualified institutional placement or QIP. What brings us to an important topic called as QIP? Because this is something that across this year we'll be hearing such words called as QIP. And in this context, we need to find out what do you mean by QIP. And the recent news being Indigo to raise up to 3,000 crores through a qualified institutional placement, the company said. So when you hear a news like this, you should find out what do you mean by a QIP and understand simply what does QIP mean. So that is the important thing that we have to find out in this, and let's quickly move and find out what do you mean by QIP. So putting together, we'll put QIP in the center. QIP is nothing but this is a tool. Very important, understand. This is a tool, nothing to do what to raise funds. You can raise funds. That is the key word. And in this context, you should remember that listed companies can easily listed companies can easily use this tool to raise funds for their business. Just like Indigo raised 3,000 crores, you can do it. And this is very quick and one of the most preferred routes by companies. And this is quick and faster because they say the legal complications are lesser than the other normal fundraising programs. It is the legal complications, the quickness, fastness, everything is much more better when you compare to the normal rig. And what do you mean? And in this QIP, you can see that the companies can either they can give their equity, they can actually put their securities, they can give the equity shares. Very important, they can put the equity shares, or they can put the fully or part debentures. They can also put if you don't know economics, these are important terms that you should know. What you mean by debt financing, debt equity, and you should also equity shares and debt financing. All these are important think points. And the companies can put equity shares, they can give their equity, the shares, they can put the fully or partly debentures, and they can also give securities which can be made into the equity shares. Like they can give the shares of the company, and they can give a lot of things like this to the major companies. So the equity shares. And who can invest? Actually, not everybody can invest. Only people like QIB, the qualified institutional buyers. Only QIB can buy or participate in this thing called as QIP. So basically, remember, this is a tool to do what? To fundraise quick, faster, and much more easy manner. Listed companies can do that. They can put their equity shares, fully or partly converted debentures or securities, which you can convert into equity shares. So you can raise money from this platform called QIP. This is the most simple, easy way of understanding this. And now let's take a close look at it. There is, why is QIP in existence? Why do you think companies come for this QIP concept? Companies come for this QIP concept mainly because of one very important thing called as, previously the companies used to get funds from outside. That means companies used to depend on foreign funds. They used to depend on the foreign funds, and the government, they wanted to switch this. Why should you cut this dependency rate? Because many of them were dependent on this foreign sources, and we SEBI wanted to cut this off. India wanted to cut this off, so this dependency was cut off, and now QIP will be helpful in raising funds from India without the help of foreign sources. So this is the super quick points that I wanted to tell about, all the important points. Now let's quickly mark and find out. Indigo is the reason why we are discussing this. The QIP is basically the way of listed companies to raise capital without having to submit legal paperwork. I said it's very easy. Now let's quickly, and many of the countries, even India, apart from India, Southeast Asian countries also participate in this. And what is QIP? I said this is a tool. Point number one, this is a tool where a listed company, point number two, listed company issue what? Equity shares, the shares, fully or partly convertible debentures, security other than warrants that are converted into equity shares. So they give them that. And only QIB can participate. I told you only QIB can participate. So I think these points are pretty clear now. And now let's take a look about the other important things, and let's find out who are the QIB. The QIB people are registered with SEBI. Why? Once they are registered with the SEBI, one thing is very easy. SEBI does not have to scrutinize again. Indian companies used to prefer foreign funds in the foreign markets, and now to cut off that, SEBI came up with the idea of QIP. So that is the reason why I said cut off the foreign dependence. And this does not involve much complications like the IPO and the FPO, and it's comparatively lesser complicated and comparatively faster. And since the QIBs are people who have registered with the SEBI, so that is the reason why everything is easy, because SEBI, QIB people or the QIBs are registered with SEBI, so it is very easy for them to scrutinize that. So these are the important quick points that we have to discuss, and some rules and regulations in case if you want to know few rules and regulations. No, if the size of the issue is up to 250 crores, there should be at least 2 buyers. This is something that just read it. What if you get a question in the prelims you don't know? If the size of the issue is about 250 crores, there should be at least 5 buyers. And if this issue is about 250 crores, a single buyer cannot take 50% stake. I think it's very easy. Promoters of the company cannot participate in this issue. And the company should issue minimum 10% of the total allotments to mutual funds. So whatever be the funds, 10% of that should go to mutual funds. So these are some of the rules and regulations. If 250, 2 buyers, more than 250, at least 5 buyers. And if it is 250, single buyer cannot take more than 50%. And promoter cannot contribute, promoters cannot participate, and 10% of the issue should go to mutual funds. So these are a quick point that I wanted to tell you. And now let's take what if you get a question in the prelims examination, who is a qualified institutional buyer? Which of the following are a qualified institutional buyer? So it's a long list. You should definitely know about this important point. So let's quickly read and find out who are QIB: mutual fund, venture capital, alternate investment fund, the AIF, foreign venture capital, and a portfolio investor, a public financial institution which is defined under Companies Act, obviously, scheduled commercial bank, multilateral, bilateral corporations, state industrial development corporation, the IDC, insurance company registered with the IREDA, a provident fund with 25 crores corpus, a pension fund, very important, national investment fund, insurance fund set up by, managed by Army, Navy, Air Force. So what if you get which of the following are QIB? You get a prelims question. Scheduled commercial banks, state industrial development banks, national investment fund, insurance fund set up by the Army, Navy, etc. All the statements are correct. So find out What do you mean by QIP? It's a very, very important topic. Very, very important. Find out what you mean by a qualified institutional placement and who are QIP and what is QIB. So, very important topic. And moving on to the next important topic is this was the news item that appeared in the newspaper. Center seeks a free hand in COVID-19 management. So, what are the most important points that the center is seeking a free hand in COVID-19 management? Recently, you see that Supreme Court of India, especially in the case of oxygen, because the country has witnessed the highest deficit in oxygen supply throughout this country. So in this regard, Supreme Court, from the formation of a task force to supply of oxygen to even suggest a formula, Supreme Court of India said that they cannot sit mute spectators. So in this regard, what is this tussle and what is this? Let's find out. Yes, let's find out this issue, because basically this issue revolves around Supreme Court has been, as I said, Supreme Court has been intervening in a lot of public good activities. They have been giving comments regarding the supply of oxygen, whether it be the oxygen, whether it be the formula, and whether it be the third wave. The Supreme Court has been saying about the third wave of COVID. How are we prepared enough? So from all these aspects, Supreme Court has been very active. That is a key point. The Supreme Court has been very active and very vocal about many aspects in India. And at this time, we have the central government which clearly asked the Supreme Court of India in a detailed document asking and citing that the steps, these are the important points, the steps, the strategies, the practices, and the strategies are all taken after a lot of discussion from an expert committee. Lot of they have taken, because the government is taking the advice, the scientific advice of the advisors, a lot of senior people, experts regarding the steps, practice, strategies in dealing with the COVID-19 and how the spread, even for the vaccination, the supply of oxygen, for everything, the government is taking and consulting the highest level of people. So the central government has asked the judicial process, the judicial Supreme Court, to take off its hand from the COVID management, because they asked the Supreme Court of India not to interfere with the activities, especially with the management of COVID. So this issue, when we talk about, this is the biggest issue. These issues are very, very important for the governance topics. Very important. The polity and governance topics, such things are very, very important. The knowledge of such events will always help you to think better. So let's discuss the quick points. And the Supreme Court even said, we have always given ideas, and in the wake of a natural calamity, we cannot be a mute spectator. Supreme Court of India cannot be a mute spectator. This is what Supreme Court said. And they said, for every process, we have always given them a reminder and helped them with the many process. We have helped the central government. This is what Supreme Court also says. So let's quickly take a look at the important points and see what are the important things that you have to mark. The center wants the judiciary to keep its hand off. That means that is a key point. Keep your hands off from the COVID-19 crisis, and the policy, strategy, and steps are taken by the most important people, and they can do it independently. That is the important point that they make here. And all the decisions that you talk about are taken after detailed deliberation at the highest executive level. This is also a very important thing. And hence, no interference in the judicial proceeding, no interference in any way. And Supreme Court has asked, the center has asked Supreme Court to leave it open for the government. That's a very important. And the High Court. This is for the High Courts as well as the Supreme Court. Leave it open. Let the states and the government decide on that. This is the important point that they even cited in this regard. And let's quickly, and Supreme Court says that from April 30 to May 6, they say that they acted only on the union government's suggestion and consultation. So this process, Supreme Court clearly says that we have acted only with the consultation and nothing else. We have only done the consultation and nothing else is something that you should know. Whether it be the rough and ready formula of creating a task force, we have always consulted the central government. and they said they cannot be a mute spectator to a national calamity. We have to be together. So I think this news article is very important from the perspective of polity as well as governance, because you have the central government center versus Supreme Court, which both have constitutional impact. So knowing such events will always help you to think in that polity and governance aspects in a much more clearer manner. So this is an important item which appeared in the news. And the next important topic is the Nepal crisis. There is a political crisis. Nepal is witnessing a political crisis where the Prime Minister Oli has faced a tough position by losing the confidence motion. So that has created a lot of problems in Nepal. So Nepal has been facing a lot of political crisis in the last so many years. And when there is the issue of Nepal, why Nepal? When we have an issue in Nepal, definitely this opens up big issues of international relations, especially with India. So whatever changes that happens in Nepal is closely connected with India. We'll see how the crisis is actually affecting India and how we can actually expect a change. And we'll find out what is this important news about the Nepal Prime Minister Oli loses vote of confidence in the House of Representatives. So these are one of the most important two important news items that I'm going to discuss. So let's quickly discuss it. And before we discuss this point, let me give you a brief idea about what this issue. This issue is very important because from the perspective of international relations, Nepal. So remember the point that I said, whatever happens in Nepal has a big impact on the international relations of India, because India is at one side and the other side we have China. This is the equation that is very popular in the international world, because whatever happens in Nepal is actually having an impact on India as well as China. This is the politics of the international politics of this geopolitical region of Asia. And in this time, Prime Minister Oli, he had created a lot of, he was called as the caretaker Prime Minister of Nepal, which he himself disputed that I'm not a caretaker Prime Minister. But still, there was a lot of political crisis escalated, and the issue of 2015 is also very important, when Nepal had a strained relationship with India. Nepal had a very strained relationship with India. That is regarding the Nepal blockade. So all these things made Mr. Oli to stand against India on many issues. So that is also to be noted. And this time, and in last few times, Prime Minister Oli even dissolved the parliament. He dissolved the parliament because of the ongoing political crisis between his Nepal Communist Party, and the other parties, the Centre Maoist, etc. So all these are important crises. And finally, after the political crisis between the parties in Nepal, Mr. Oli had to give up no confidence, and which he failed. And now it will be reframed by another ministry will take over. The president will have to give opportunity for the majority people to form the party and the center. So now Oli has lost the no confidence. So this is the important thing to be noted here. And I'll tell you the background of the international relations also. So let's take a quick important point and find out what are the important. KP Sharma Oli has lost the confidence vote. He only secured 93 votes. Instead, he should have got 136. And more than 120 parliamentarians voted. And dozen people from his own party, the Nepal Communist Party, even did not vote because they have been uncooperative for a long period of time. That is why Mr. Oli dissolved the Nepalese parliament a few months back. And after that, the president reinstated the parliament. So this created a big problem. So finally, he has lost the battle. And let's take the other important part. The NCP was again formed in 2018 with a merger of Oli's Communist Party and the Communist Party, the Maoist Center of Pushpa Kamal Dahal, the famous leader of Nepal. And after Oli dissolved the parliament, the Supreme Court reinstated the parliament, and the merger and the understanding was split between the two parties. And once he has lost the vote of confidence, the Prime Minister is automatically removed from his post. And now the new coalition government will be formed as per the constitutional process. So this is an important process, and you know why we have to follow this political crisis or the failure of crisis in Nepal, because as I said, Nepal relations is very important because it opens the debate between India versus China. It opens the debate of India versus China, and that is a key important aspect here. India and China issues is very important because Mr. Oli was very popularly had a very close connection with China, and in this context, you know, the 2015, the Nepal blockade was a big reason which made him against India. And regarding a lot of things, even regarding the Mahakali Treaty, the Mahakali Treaty is very important. That is a treaty between India and Nepal for creating a watershed on the river Mahakali. He actually went against that Mahakali, and that made him very popular in Nepal. The Mahakali instance, the Mahakali Treaty instance, and the movement instance. And what he did is he made a few constitutional amendments in Nepal. When he became very close to China, what he did was he went against India. He went against New Delhi, and what he did is he did many constitutional amendments and even added maps into Nepalese geographical map. He added many places which are still in dispute with India. So all these things made him very unpopular with India, and that's why he became very close to China. So that is the reason why I say whenever you have to follow the Nepalese crisis, because whatever happens in Nepal might help China as well as India. So this is an important topic for the international relations perspective. So we'll track this complete detail. I'll give you the whole story of the Nepal political crisis in the World Affairs International Relations special session that I'm going to do for Learnstroke. We'll follow up, track the whole issue of Nepal constitutional crisis, and I'll tell you the detailed note about that. The next important topic is a concept called as a Bangladesh vaccine diplomacy, because this brings us to a larger concept of Bangladesh, India, and with the new entrant, China. This is what is a Bangladesh vaccine diplomacy, because the vaccine supply to Bangladesh by India has been cut off, and that the Bangladesh government has replaced the Indian supplies with the Chinese supplies. So that is Bangladesh opts for China's vaccine, and that's a very important concept to be noted. This again opens up the international diplomatic perspective also. This also has an international relations aspect, because if Bangladesh is supported by China, obviously that is going to be a big threat for India. So this is the equation that normally international relations holds for all the countries and especially India. And in this concept, you have to note, and they talk about the Chinese vaccine, which is called as a Sinopharm. They talk about the Chinese vaccine and how are you going to supply it. And they also talk about an anti-pandemic cooperation, very important point. They talk about an anti-pandemic cooperation and between China and Bangladesh. So these are some of the points that we have to quickly discuss here. Let's talk about this. First of all, they have said that the supply of vaccines, because Bangladesh at this point, this is the issue in short, Bangladesh at the center point was receiving Covishield vaccine. Very important to be noted here. They were receiving the Covishield vaccine. They were receiving the Covishield vaccine from the Serum Institute of India, the SII, and they were purely getting this. And what happened is the SII failed to give at least 2 million doses to Bangladesh. There has been a continuous delay by the Indian Serum Institute of India. They made a delay in giving at least 2 million doses of vaccine, the Covishield vaccine to Bangladesh, and that for the first time made them to cut off the lines between India and bring China into the picture to get the Chinese vaccine, the Sinopharm. They are now getting this vaccine. So this opens up the vaccine diplomacy. India is being overthrown by China, and in this regard they signed what is called as a China Bangladesh anti-pandemic cooperation, and they have left out India from this. So China has won the bus of diplomacy here, and these are the important points that we have to note. Let's quickly take a look at all the important points. And they will receive the consignment from China made vaccine. This will be the first time that the Bangladesh will receive the Chinese vaccine in such large quantity. And they have created what is called as the China Bangladesh Anti-Pandemic Cooperation, and the Sinopharm vaccine will arrive in Dhaka. And importantly, you should know that Dhaka has been sourcing the Covishield from Pune Serum Institute of India, and they have delayed the delivery of at least 2 million doses that Bangladesh was supposed to get, and that created this big vaccine diplomacy shift from India to China. So these issues are important for international relations also, because whenever in the Indian subcontinent or the Indian geographical region, whenever you see that India's neighbors are assisted by China, India, from the international or global perspective, always sees this as a threat. So it has a big impact on international relations also. Moving on to the important next topic is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, which is called as BRSR. And important articles in newspaper talks about this. Economic Times, Hindu, Indian Express, every talks about this thing called as this BRSR report. And what is this report? And what is this format? Because they talk about a new format. And basically, what is the concept of business responsibility and sustainability report? Because we say that previously there was something about the reporting only, the BRR, and now what is BRSR? And what is this basic concept of business responsibility? You can divide this whole thing into two important parts. What do you mean by business responsibility is one such part, and sustainability report is part two, and this is part one. So it can be easily divided into all these aspects. So what is business responsibility part one, and what is business sustainability report part two? So we'll quickly take an idea and analysis about all these concepts, and let's check it out. And before we move on, let me update you about what do you mean by BRSR. And in this concept, I think you should remember a few important concepts called as philosophy of business responsibilities. And what do you mean by shareholder primacy? This is something, before we understand the concept of BRSR, it's important that we know what do you mean by philosophy of business responsibility and what is shareholder primacy. So previously, this is something business. This was something, imagine that this is business and you do a business, and the ultimate philosophy of business in the olden times was to maximize, to what? To maximize profit. That is the philosophy of that, to get the profit and give this profit to who? To the shareholders. This is the most important philosophy of business in the olden times. When you do a business, maximize profit, give that profit back to the shareholders, and that is what is called as business in the olden times. So now, if you want to understand this whole concept of BRSR, I think the best thing is to do it from this example, this model. This is the first model when business used to be maximizing profit and sending it to the shareholder. So soon after that, the next philosophy again came that there are more employees of your company. And you must have heard about, there is a lot of things like ESOP, which you will find out. And imagine that there are a lot of employees which make up your business. So a part of your business, your philosophy says that a part of your business and part of everything, the care, warmth, financial return should also go to your employees. Later on, this became the next philosophy. Slowly, this philosophy shifted. Business is not about giving the maximizing profit and giving to the shareholder and even taking care of your employees. There are other goals also. Very, very important goals. There are other goals important, like what is the impact on the environment that you create? What is your social impact? So environmental and social goals, the ESG, are very important. The environmental social goals. What is your, how much of your business is actually contributing? What is the impact that your business makes on the environment? What is the impact that your business makes on the social front? And you must have heard about CSR. So I'll give you a timeline about everything. I'm just talking about the philosophy of business. So this is how. And in the time of climate change, your businesses, the way how we look at the business, the philosophy of business change. That is the first philosophy when profit maximizing was the most important thing. Now they shift on to the employees, and now we have environmental social goals, the ESG goals. What is the social impact? What is the environmental impact that your business is actually creating? That is what is the second point says, that your shareholder primacy should shift to larger goals, and the company should have a responsibility, and that is what is the words called as the business responsibility. Your business should have responsibility not only to the shareholder, not only to the employees, but to the environment, but to the social cost, everything. You have to list out that. This is what is called as, this is the first part of this debate. So I think you have an idea about business. And now let's important discuss the important concepts like the 2020 Davos manifestos. When you hear the word Davos, the first thing that should come into your mind is WEF, the World Economic Forum. Very, very important for your prelims as well as mains. You should know what you mean by the World Economic Forum. Find out what are the important things about World Economic Forum. And in Davos, there is something called as a 2020 Davos Manifesto, which concepts, which clearly gives an important concept called as stakeholder capitalism. That is the stakeholder capitalism. Just like I said, the business, one stakeholder is the shareholder. The next stakeholders can be the employees who work for that, and there are many other stakeholders like environmental, social, political, the society at large. So a business doesn't mean that only create profit, only create give ESOP, give things to your employees. No, there are a larger things beyond that, and you should have a stake. Business should have a stakeholder capitalism. You know, using such words for GS means, especially you get a question. All these can definitely increase your improve your marking. So now we need stakeholder primacy or stakeholder capitalism. Environmental, social, good governance objective. That means the ESG goals. Please remember, these are all important vocabularies that will increase, that will give you a better marks in the mains examination. The stakeholder capitalism, ESG, environmental, social, good governance, the ESG objectives, the ESG governance objectives, all are important words that come here. So this was the core business philosophy, and this is how companies started thinking about business responsibility, and there is a way of making them do. And for that, I'll give you a timeline. Right from a long time back, you should know how companies started to take up this concept of business responsibility, and there is a timeline which we have to define. So let's now quickly define the timeline, and let's understand the important things also. So first we'll discuss about, I think we'll quickly discuss all the 2009, there was a voluntary guideline. It's called the VG CSR, the corporate social responsibility. You know that the companies have to spend a lot of things for the education, environment, society, etc. So CSR, you need to find out what CSR was the first, one of the first steps about business responsibility. And in 2011, United Nations Human Rights Councils, there is UNGP, United Nations Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights. Even that is an important part of this timeline, which is called as the UNGP Business and Human Rights. And in 2011, they created a national voluntary guidelines on social, environmental, and economic responsibility of business. Very, very important. This is called as the NVG guidelines. I'll teach you about the 9 principles of good business. They talk about 9 principles of business, which we'll discuss here. So NVG, National Voluntary Guidelines, and the 9 principles are very, very important. And this is an important topic for GS mains. Definitely, very, very important topic for GS mains. You can get a lot of questions for this, because as a question on business, definitely you can get it for paper 3, and even GS paper 4, you can get questions on guidelines regarding the business, what ethics, etc., ethics, integrity. And you can also, if you're taking public administration also, these areas, the answers, the vocabularies, everything will make your public administration much more better. So please remember that. And in 2008, they released something called as Business Responsibility Reporting, BRR. So BRSR is not here. Initially, they started BRR, which is called as the Business Responsibility Reporting. That is the first point. What is BRR? Basically, BRR was responsible. It is a disclosure of, it is a long list. BRR that contains a long list. Apart from, we say that the companies have a lot of financial regulations and financial policies. So making the companies think beyond financial policies, there is a long list of things to do like CSR. That is basically called as business responsibility reporting, and business is applicable to all type of companies, manufacturing, service. It is responsible business practices by a listed company to all its stakeholders. You should do a lot of things. So this was basically regarding the BRR. So after that, let's quickly find out the BRR was shifted. The BRR shifted to what is called as the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, BRSR. That means apart from financial compliance, this is the word. Every company has got financial compliance. So apart from financial compliance, let's talk about environmental compliance of the company. Let's talk about the social compliance of the company. So these are the important words that I want to tell you. So BRSR, as the word said, previously business responsibility reporting. So previously it was only regarding the reporting, and now they have added something called as sustainability. The word sustainability has been recommended. So it is all about the ESG goals. I think I've already told you about ESG goals. So making the company list out all the ESG goals apart from the main things is what is business responsibility and sustainability reports of the company. So very, very important points. I think ESG are very important. Now let's discuss the 9 important principles of NSG. For a close understanding, I've made red marks for the important keywords. The first principle, basically all the principle talk about business. The first principle was talking about doing the business with ethics, integrity, and transparency and accountability. That is why this is very important for GS paper 4 in the means. And business should be safe. The key word is life cycle. Sustainability in life cycle. Second is ethics. Third is well-being of an employee. Fourth is be responsible to disadvantaged and vulnerable marginalized sections. Section 4, promote human rights, and the business should restore environment and should be responsible when you influence a public or a regulatory policy. And principle 8, inclusive growth and equitable development, all points important for UPSC, and provide value to the customers and consumers. So there is a concept of value. So if you're watching the video, you can pause it and watch it. I've marked the important key principles in red. So these are some of the, and the 9 principles of NVG. I hope you know what you mean by an NVG. And yeah, for a quicker perspective, principal stakeholders, human rights, environment, public policy, inclusive growth, customers' well-being, ethics, integrity, accountability, transparency, life cycle, sustainability, and well-being of the employee. So these are the 9 principles that business should have. And please understand, apart from please remember the concept of the business philosophy and the business philosophy of responsibility. What do you mean by business responsibility? This is a philosophy. And please remember all the concepts that I told you, the stakeholder capitalism and the Davos Manifesto. All these are important words. If you write it in the mains examination, definitely your marks will increase. So please remember this concept about the BRSR. It's importantly that you know this, know the important concepts of BRSR.